Hey guys, welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel if you've been following along with the progress of the LS Turbo V8 240SX here. Today we're going to be unboxing the new VS Racing G42 Turbo that's going on the car very soon. Probably start putting it on this weekend. So the Turbo came in today and I'm going to do a little unboxing for you and we're going to check it out together. Okay, so let's open up this Turbo and have a look and see what it looks like. This sucker is seriously boxed up. And this only took, I think, like from the day I ordered it, and I think it only took like 2 or 3 days to get here. Came out of Houston, Texas, and I'm in Missouri, so kind of not too far away, I guess. This box is huge. Imagine it's double boxed, I guess, maybe. I love getting new turbos. It's like my favorite thing on a car project is my turbos. Okay, so it's not double boxed, it just has a bunch of this foam, expanding foam padding. This stuff's pretty cool. Really good way to keep something safe. So here are the gaskets. There's 2 gaskets in there. Not sure why there's 2, but alright, there's the Turbo. Let's see what else is in here, if anything. So there's nothing else in the box. I had hoped there would be flanges and clamps. Sometimes when I buy them from VS, they come with flanges. Sometimes they don't, I guess. So I can tell right off the bat that the compressor cover is way bigger than the 7875 that I'm used to. My current turbo is a Gen 1 7875, so it's got the smallest compressor cover I think they ever offered on it, which really hurt flow. They upgraded that later. Okay, so it looks pretty good so far. Covers off of it. Oh yeah, looks pretty good. Let me zoom you in a little bit. Okay, so we've got the new VS Racing G42 here, and we've got my old Gen 1 7875 here. I've been running this turbo for a couple of years, and I love this turbocharger. It is awesome. I've had it up around 650, 700 horsepower level on my 5.3 liter, and ran a best of a 980 at the track at 142 miles an hour at about 3,000 pound car approximately. So this turbo is awesome for me because it spools super fast, yet it can still make that kind of power. And it's very small and compact, you can fit it into just about any engine bay. So that's the Gen 1 7875. I was running it at 20 PSI, and it's pretty close to maxed out at 20 PSI. My back pressure was getting close to 2 to 1. I could have ran a little more boost through it and got a little more power out of it, probably without any problems, but it was pretty close to being done. And I really wanted something that would take me to about maybe 800, 850 horsepower if possible, but still spool really fast. So I started looking around, and VS Racing has come out with 2 or 3 generations newer of this turbo. So those were all options for me. And then they just recently came out with this, the G42, which is a clone of Garrett's G42. And so this became an option for me to consider as well, because this turbo has the same size turbine wheel as this one. And the turbine wheel size is really what determines how fast or slow your turbo is going to spool for the most part. That's the biggest determining factor. So I didn't want to go a lot bigger on the turbine wheel. And so, because I wanted to maintain this kind of spool, but I wanted this kind of power. So this turbo is a 78 millimeter on the compressor inducer, and this one is an 80, so 2 more millimeters here, just a tiny bit bigger. But the big story and horsepower difference here is really, I guess really 3 different things. It's 2 millimeters bigger here, so that's a little bit going to flow some more air, I suppose. Not a big deal, but definitely going to flow some more air. So really the big story here in horsepower difference between these two is going to be the AR of the compressor housing. This compressor housing is substantially bigger pretty much everywhere you look at it, and especially on the outlet here. But the overall diameter is significantly bigger. And that's one of the things they upgraded on this turbo too. As the generations of this turbo went on, they went bigger and bigger on the compressor cover, because I think they realized that it needed to be bigger to make more power. And so the newest version of this actually has a compressor cover very similar to this. So this must be the best designed compressor cover for maximum flow and horsepower. So that's one of the big stories here about why this turbocharger will make so much more power than this one. So the AR of the compressor cover is bigger and the outlet's bigger. And this outlet's going to work out well for me because I actually have 3.5 inch intercooler pipe, and this I believe is 3 inch, so it's pretty close. I'm only going from a 3 to a 3.5, whereas on this turbo I was going from whatever this is, that's tiny, it's like 2 inches, and I was expanding out to 3.5, so just in theory better for aerodynamics and flow right there. And then the next story here in terms of horsepower is going to be on the turbine wheel itself. The 7875 has a 10 blade turbine wheel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you look in there, I don't know if you can see that or count them, but there's 10 blades in there, and it's 75 millimeters across. Whereas this one, there are 9 blades in there, and it's 75 millimeters across. So if you just think about it logically, you're trying to cram, 800 horsepower or however much air through here. They're both the same diameter, but this one has 10 blades and this one has 9 blades. So just thinking about it logically, you're going to be able to get more air through 9 blades and 9 openings between the blades, so to speak, versus 10. So that's one big difference there. Also, the angle of the blades and the aerodynamics, the pitch or whatever of these blades could be different. I don't really know. I'm looking at them right now, and I can see some differences, but I can't exactly tell you what the differences are as far as the shape of the blades. But I would imagine there's something different with that as well. This is the I forget what they call this turbine wheel. I think they call this the G series turbine wheel, whereas this is the older style turbine wheel that's probably been around since the 80s or something. And this is the new Aero. So like I said earlier, this whole turbo is a clone of Garrett's G42 Turbo, and we all know Garrett's pretty much king of the hill when it comes to turbochargers, research and development, aerodynamics, engineering, all that. So if you're going to clone a turbo, you may as well clone the best turbo out there, I guess. So that's what we got here. So it's a 7580, whereas this was a 7578. Actually, it's called a 7875, and this would be an 8075. So that's the big difference, and the big story here on the G42 is it is still a small frame turbo, and it's still a small turbine wheel, relatively speaking. So in theory, it's going to still spool as good as this one, but make a lot more power because of all the reasons we've discussed here. And then also, this turbo here, as you can see, has the V-band inlet on the turbine housing, which I need for my setup. My setup was T4, and then I switched to V-band for a different turbo, and then I wanted to put this one back on, so I actually welded a 3-inch V-band to my T4 flange so that I could bolt this up to my existing hot side, and that worked out fantastic. I had no issues with that whatsoever. So that explains why this looks like this, in case you're wondering. So now I can just go straight to this turbo, and this should bolt up to my hot side. So in case you're wondering, because I was wondering before I bought it, this measures 3 5/8 across here, outside to outside. Inside to inside is 2 and just over 2.5. The outlet on the turbine on this turbo, I'm trying to measure the inside diameter. Excuse me. Inside diameter is 3 inch or 75 millimeter, as it says, and then out here from outside to outside measures 4 1/4. And then what else? Compressor outlet measures across there 4 1/4 on the V-band for this. And then the compressor inlet, if you want to order a turbo guard for it, or an air filter or a coupler, that guy measures 5 inches across. So those are the basic dimensions of this turbo, and that kind of explains my thinking and my thought process on why I wanted this turbo over all the other turbos. I strongly considered the Gen 3 version of the 7875. I almost bought it because it's the latest and greatest 7875, and I thought, well, I'll go from the Gen 1 straight to the Gen 3. It'll be the best 7875 available, and it should work out really well. But I messaged the salesman that I purchased all my turbos through, and I said, what about this G42? It seems very similar to the Gen 3 7875. Which one would you run? And he said, G42 all day, hands down, 100%. And I think his reasoning for that was due to the better turbine aerodynamics. That's what I suspect is why he said that, but he has tested a lot of turbos and he really likes the G42. I do have a local guy that runs a speed shop here not too far from me that said he ran a G42, the Garrett version, on a LS. I think it was a 5.3 liter LS, and he claims that they made on their dyno 1,000 horsepower to the tire on this turbo. So that's really encouraging to me. I'm really not trying to make 1,000. If I can make 850, I think I could run in the high 8s with this car. Certainly I can run in the low 9s with it. So that's kind of my goal for this car and my hope for this turbo. I want a turbo that spools like this, but has potential to turn the car up higher and higher as time goes on, should I want to, without having to jump up to an S400 size turbocharger, which I had on the car briefly earlier this year and totally did not like it. Super laggy, turbine wheel way too big, shaft too heavy, wheels too heavy, turbocharger itself extremely heavy. I didn't like the S400 class turbos at all. I wanted to stay down here on this general frame size, but I wanted basically the best turbocharger, highest horsepower potential I could get while still staying in this small frame size and still spooling well with the small turbine wheels. So I hope that explains the choice here and why I went from that to this. And I hope that kind of gives you an overview of the G42 Turbo and what's special about it. Again, it is the bigger AR compressor cover, which flows a lot more, and it is the 9-blade turbine wheel with the new turbine aerodynamics on it, and V-band inlet is very cool to have as well, and also these V-bands that hold the center section to the housing. That's very cool and very easy to use. It just takes one nut and then you can clock everything, so that's very handy. So this is a very new generation or new era turbocharger, very much modern in all of its features, whereas this is very much an old school turbocharger, very old in all of its features. Another thing this turbo has is a speed sensor port right here. I'm not going to be using this right off the bat. I may never use it, I'm not sure, but you can put in a speed sensor right here and you can measure how fast the turbo is actually spinning. And then this right here is a vacuum port. So, alright guys, I think that's going to do it for this video. I hope that shows you a little bit about the VS Racing G42 and gets you a little bit excited for the progress on the car here. I'm going to try to get this on within the next week. I need to order the V-band flanges for it and a couple of clamps and do some modifying to my cold side and my exhaust. So should have some turbo review videos coming out on this within the next week or two. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thank you.